So, good morning. Critical infrastructure. We are a startup conference, a lot of new activity there, startups, great ideas. Why would we concern ourselves with elements as basic and fundamental as critical infrastructure? Well, nothing beats a personal experience. We all live in a world where we are used to outage times that are basically not noticeable. When that's the last time, I mean, besides the great service the city of Munich has done to our country this morning, when is the last time that you personally have been affected by the outage of electricity? Well, probably you can't remember. A few years back, I was working in Aberdeen, consulting project then, 6 people in a project, and 6 o'clock in the morning, lights out. So what happened? Well, you had 6 consultants that had a distinctive smell to them as the day grew on, because none of us had the chance to shave or shower, with the exception of our partner, who reeked of not gin, he was British, but tonic. He was under the shower while the electricity was cut off, and they started emptying the minibar. He was using the water first, then the soda water, and last was the tonic water, which he used to rinse off the rest of the soap. So there was a fun experience in a way, and gives us an example of what happens when we really have lights out. It's not only that we don't have electricity for any given amount of time, we are out of water, we are out of telephony, the cable cars don't work, and give it a day or so, life comes to a standstill. And this is why people have realized that infrastructure is critical. And if you like it or not, all of you here in this room are part of a critical infrastructure. You may think yourself as being a cloud service provider, like Oliver yesterday with CarSAP. But he's part of a critical infrastructure. Actually, he's part of multiple critical infrastructures because he's touching the electricity system. If he's using e-vehicles, he's touching the transport system. Likewise with Alexander and his electric helicopters, same thing. So we need to wonder what's happening with the infrastructure. And typically when we talk about critical infrastructure with utility executives, we see a very engineering-driven approach to critical infrastructure, very mechanic approach. Typically, it's about people, keeping the bad ones out. It's about processes, making sure that we are ISO 9000, whatever is certified, and whatever standard we have around the globe. And it's about systems, keeping the worms, the viruses, whatever you have it, out of the system. And if we do all this, we believe our infrastructure is safe. Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. If you look about the energy system that we are living in, the change that we are envisioning, I believe that even if we keep the bad ones out, keep the good ones safe, make sure that we have the latest innovation in our systems, that the energy system per se as a system is not safe. And I would want to start a conversation around not protecting the infrastructure, because the infrastructure is very basic, but protecting the system, because only if the system works, we will not experience too many lights out going forward. What I've brought with me this morning are 6 examples that I believe are critical to keeping the lights on. If you think about 15 years back, 20 years back, utilities were operating in a very monopolistic structure. Very few big utilities being around then. And when I was in university getting economics training, first thing we learned was monopolies are good for business. Even better so if it's a natural monopoly, because then you're basically certain that you will be the only one in that market going forward. Now that has changed. Come unbundling about 15 years ago, we've seen the effects of that. What unbundling caused was, first of all, a breakup of the utilities as we come to know them, but also we have seen utilities venturing abroad. If you look at the penetration that the likes of EDF, RWE, E.ON had on a global scale 20 years ago, that was basically non-existent. Now we have utilities wandering off in countries as remote as South America. China, we heard from Urban yesterday about venturing into Russia. So there's a massive change there. And why is that critical from a systems perspective? Well, national governments still consider utilities to basically be a national heritage. It's unthinkable that a utility would leave their incumbent country. Why should they? Well, aren't they tied in with all the capital expenditure that they have made in that country? And if we look at what has happened so far, take E.ON as an example. E.ON has disinvested a significant part of their capital base, and capital is the scarcest thing that we all need to make the energy transition happen, in Germany. 4 years ago, E.ON was forced to sell the transmission network. Last year, we had Fukushima. Things are accelerating. This year, E.ON is setting off 3 of their DSOs. Maybe E.ON won't be a German company anymore 2, 3, 4 years from now, leaving Germany entirely. Well, you could think that this is nothing important, nothing serious. Manufacturing companies, financial services companies do this all the time. Well, it's easy to ship PCs, laptops, notebooks around and manufacture in China, but we just can't ship electricity from China to Germany. Can we? No, not yet. Probably not in the next 20 or 50 or 100 years. So we are dependent upon the infrastructure being there and capital expenditures being kept in the country. Aging workforce, one of my favorite topics. These figures are taken from the EDF Sustainability Report 2010. I really appreciate that assessment because it crystallizes the challenge that utilities are facing. Capital is scarce, knowledge is scarce. If you look at how a utility operates typically on the basis of unstructured information, meaning it's captured in the heads and the brains of operators, engineers, skilled technicians that keep the system going on a daily basis. Now what's happening here, what EDF has so brilliantly assessed is that in 2010, over the next 5 years, they will lose about 50% of their technical operators in the business. Amazing. I've spent most of my career in consulting, living in an environment where you have churn of somewhere between 15 and 20%. Now, you typically bring in bright young people from university and the system spits them out after 3, 4 years. Nothing bad there. And that's how the system works, and you're not dependent upon knowledge transfer to that extent. But if you're losing the base of your operators at that rate, then your system is at risk of not being able to maintain. Aging workforce has been around for the past, again, 10, 15 years, and this is going to be the year 2000 problem that financial institutions had on the software side, on the people side for utilities. So we need to find a way of actually managing that, making a transition on the knowledge side to keep the system running. A greener economy, a greener generation base, this is what a lot of us are working against. We want to make this planet more livable, more sustainable going forward. Sustainability is also, does have a different flavor from a politics perspective. We want to be independent from the countries that are currently delivering the blood of our energy system, of our veins. So basically, independent from oil, gas, and coal. Well, at the same time while we are doing this, we are creating new dependencies. We are creating dependencies on countries that own the mines or the mining rights to precious metals, rare earth. And if you look at where those countries or those raw materials are coming from that we need in a lot of renewable generation facilities, well, it's countries like China. And we can then have an argument if you'd rather be dependent upon China than Saudi Arabia. But the sustainability effect from a political perspective is currently missing. We need to really engage in a conversation of, on a global scale, how should those raw materials spread equally, so to make sure that it's not a German or a Chinese or a French or an English or whatever type of conversation around sustainability. It's sustainability on a global scale. Innovation, another brilliant topic. Utilities are notoriously infamous for not being innovative. I mean, despite the things that we have seen, public opinion is utilities are fat cats, they don't move, and they are actually standing in the way of the energy transition. And there's some truth to that, coming from the system they have been operating for the past 100 years. If you look at the efficiency increase that we have in the power system, gas turbines around 1% over the last 20 years per anno. I mean, there's naturally a physical limitation to how much efficiency you can get out of a gas turbine, so I don't expect here 10, 20% efficiency gains a year given, but that has infiltrated the thinking and the speed at which the industry is moving. Now, Steve put it up yesterday in his presentation, Moore's Law. The ICT industry that is moving into the utility industry is, compared to that, moving at the speed of light. We are doubling efficiency every 18 months. Now, that is hitting utilities. And when we're having those conversations around bringing more ICT into the utility operation, the question typically is, well, will that router work in 10 years' time if I install it in my secondary substation? Is it future-proof? And amazingly or not, the answer is yes and no. Yes, very likely that router will work in 10 years' time because we've designed the product specifically for that purpose, for the harsh operating environment of utility. But no, it is not going to be future-proof because if you think about the refresh times that we have now on the PC basis, our company is churning 20,000 PCs, 1/3 of the base, every year. Not because we believe that PowerPoint has become so powerful that we need to churn our PC base, no, but because the overall system is moving forward. And cybersecurity plays a major part in this. So even if utilities would want that router to stay in a secondary substation for 10, 15 years, for an investment perspective, they will need to move to a much quicker refresh cycle, 2 to 3 years, because hackers love nothing more than infrastructure that is legacy, that's 5, 10 years old, because then it's not up to standards, it's not secure. And also the business models that a lot of you are working on, they are dependent upon latest innovation in the power system, in the energy system, because otherwise your business models won't work. Industry concentration, we have a big push for remunicipalization in Germany and in a lot of other countries as well. What's happening is there is governments, mayors sold out the utility business about 10, 15 years ago, got a big paycheck, and now they figure, well, if you still can make a lot of money on a utility network, why not take it back and take concessions back? And that is coming at a time when the system is incredibly more complex than when they sold it out 15 years ago. 15 years ago, that was dumb infrastructure. On a DSO basis, it didn't take a lot to operate the system. Today, that is much different because, again, you are all contributing to this. We have new business models on distributed energy, about consumer management, Napster of electricity. Those type of business models, they need to be built into the system. The system needs to be better managed. And as we speak, TSOs are actually working right now on pushing more responsibility for grid stability down on the DSO level. And if you look at the typical medium-sized municipality, 50 people, so you have 50 people, one is the CEO, 49 operational people, his secretary, 48, his driver, 47, the cleaning lady, 46, and so on. You get the drift. I mean, in the end, there are only 2 or 3 people left on the side of the utility that are actually capable of understanding and managing the complex IT system that stands behind it. And I just believe that won't work. And lastly, point number 6, regulation. If you look at how regulation operates today, it's basically in keeping the heritage of the unbundling that started 15 years ago. A linear thinking. 15 years ago, we broke up the value chain, disrupted it, discreated synergy, so to speak, for the sake of creating more competition, which may or may not have worked over time, but now we are living in the unbundled world. And the new energy system that we want to create is one where we don't have linear thinking, we have lateral thinking, to cite Rifkin's. Lateral thinking means a totally different way of working together. We need to recreate that connection between the different parts of the value chain. And instead of saying, if you want to work in or live in an environment where we have 80% green generation in 2050, that will be prosumer-driven to some extent, that needs a different regulatory framework. Instead of taking this vision and then working the steps back, what regulation is currently doing is actually the opposite, taking today's system and trying to make it better, make it workable, but actually hampering it and creating ever more regulation until the system will break. So, what's my ask for you guys here? Well, the ask is, if anybody pushes back in terms of your business model won't work, it's not secure, it's destabilizing the system, we have cybersecurity issues, push back saying, well, you know what, actually, from an infrastructure perspective, what we have today is not working. And you're making the system more safe, more reliable, better if you all work together. Thank you.